More on this, I'm joined by our international affairs commentator, Douglas Herbert. Doug, hello.
Hello, Allison.
Russia clearly trying to blame Ukraine for this. Why and on what grounds?
Yeah, because it does not, it seems to be a rather heavy propaganda lift to connect the Islamic State group with Ukraine. So you might ask, why is Russia doing this? Why is it going through the motions of this virulent, what appears to be a virulent disinformation campaign to sow confusion and doubt and to raise all sorts of theories? Well, two obvious reasons are Russia clearly failed to prevent this attack. There have been past attacks in Russia over the past in recent years. This is the worst in over a decade. And the security forces, despite clear warnings, the U.S. Embassy 2 weeks ago put out a warning of a possible imminent plans by what it called extremists to target a public gathering in the Russian capital. It also says it warned Russian authorities in response before this latest attack. What did Putin say? He called it obvious blackmail by a United States that is simply trying to intimidate Russia and its people. So that's egg on your face, in a sense. They knew about it. They got a credible warning from a U.S. that was acting, you can argue, in good faith, trying to share pertinent intelligence information with their Russian counterparts, and Russia weaponizing it to use it in the service of its own anti-Ukraine propaganda. And at the same time, you have the war in Ukraine. At a time when Putin's coming off a landslide victory, he has the wind in his sails, as he would see it, and this is the time, if any, to ramp up that war in Ukraine. He has shown no sign of trying to ratchet it down. He's ramping it up. So why not enlist, co-opt a horrific terrorist attack in the agency of a war of aggression against your neighbor, now in its third year, where you could use all of the help you can get. And I will just note that Ukraine's foreign ministry, obviously you could say a biased source, but what they said is, listen to their words. They said, they put out a statement saying that making such accusations against Ukraine, that is Putin implying and his people implying that Ukraine somehow involved and recruited these terrorists, is really doing so with the goals of, quote, stirring up anti-Ukrainian hysteria in Russian society and creating conditions to boost the mobilization of Russian citizens into the criminal aggression against our state. Those are the words of Ukraine's foreign ministry. Like I said, obviously they're coming from it from a very clear perspective. But it's also hard to listen to those statements and not see more than a kernel of truth in that. Because right now it is true. Putin has used this and weaponized these types of attacks in the past in order to rally the support of Russians, most notably perhaps in 1999 when there were apartment bombings, 4 of them, in residential buildings, large residential buildings, some of them on the outskirts of Moscow. Those came in the autumn of 1999. Putin was not yet president. He was still virtually relatively unknown to the Russian public. He went on and he was able to rally support against the Chechens. These attacks, these bombings were blamed on Chechen separatists, and as a result of them, he was able to go on, and a lot of analysts will credit those bombings with giving him the boost he needed. Not saying he planned the bombings, not saying he was behind them, but he was able to use that horrific event in order to rally Russian public opinion behind him in a war against Chechen separatists, and it propelled him ultimately to the presidency, and the rest is literally history.
The claims, though, from the Islamic State group could complicate Putin's narrative, though, right? Couldn't they, Doug? I mean, the U.S. says that those claims are credible.
Yeah, well, the U.S. has, like I said, said that they see nothing to cast doubt on the credibility of these claims. Remember, we're talking about a branch of the Islamic State group, the Khorasan, ISIS-K as it's called, which emerged in 2014, really in Pakistan, but also from remnants of disaffected Eastern local fighters in Afghanistan. They came together. They have really made a horrific reputation for themselves ever since. But one thing that we have seen from their extensive propaganda campaigns is Russia has been the focus of those virulent propaganda campaigns. Putin is seen as a man with the blood of Muslims on his hands. He is seen as a man whose military interventions in places ranging from Afghanistan to Syria, where he fought against what's known as Daesh, so ISIS and its affiliates and allies, and also obviously in Chechnya, which I was talking about before. Russia is seen as a country that is waging an anti-Muslim crusade, and ISIS-K, this group, sees these types of attacks. They've done some in Iran as well. They've been accused of staging similar types of attacks in the past year or so in Iran. If they can stage and project themselves into countries like Russia and Iran, it really is their goal, to project themselves as big, prominent global players, able to commit and perpetrate these horrific attacks, even in big powers such as Iran and Russia. So no one is really beyond their domain, so to speak. So they hate Russia. Their propaganda's made that clear. There's no reason to doubt this claim. Do we know 100% that it's true? No. Maybe tomorrow it will be proven wrong. I don't think so. It seems to be credible, and I'm not the one saying it. Intelligence experts in the United States who have far more evidence that I haven't seen believe it's credible.
All right, we'll have to see what Russian investigators come up with. Doug, thank you so much. As always, that's our international affairs commentator, Douglas Herbert.